A few years ago, this over here would cost me about 30 Ghana cedis, but today it costs 120 Ghana cedis. What happened? That is what I am here to try to explain today. What is causing the steady decline of the Ghanaian cedi? This is going to be the first part of a series of videos about the Ghanaian economy and how it has changed over time due to some events and policies. The Ghanaian currency has undergone a lot of fascinating changes. From using the British pound during colonization to introducing their own currency after they gained independence, it has been one of the most redenominated currencies in Africa. In this video, I'm going to try to explain the events that took place to inspire the steady decline of the cedi over time. As we all know, during the height of the British Empire, it functioned on the exploitation of its colonies. So colonies like Ghana, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone were used primarily as a source of raw materials and the market for manufactured products from Britain, their colonial master. Ghana was rich in natural resources like gold, timber, and cocoa, but they had no industrial capacity, so they could not process these raw materials into anything valuable. Using the cocoa as an example, the cocoa beans were not very marketable locally or internationally, just a fruit to be eaten and discarded. But the colonial masters knew the value and what it could potentially be used for. So they would export the raw materials into their country to be processed into chocolate, cocoa powder, and export these goods back into Gold Coast and other countries to sell, reaping every single bit of the profit. This is not just about cocoa, they were doing this to the other materials as well.
Do you know what you have done? Business!
And they had every intention of keeping it this way. As more time went by, the Ghanaian populace got accustomed to the taste of these imported goods from Britain and other countries. And because the country had no industrial capacity, it created an unhealthy dependence on the British for essential goods. And that has been the trend till date.
Hey, I don't let me say this is business. These people are not 419ers. They are money doublers. By the time they finish doubling this money, we are rich. Shut up. Shut up, Dada.
Let's talk about currency now. Since Gold Coast was a British colony, they used the West African British pound, which had the same value as the British pound sterling, but different fiscal notes and coins. So after many years of colonization, in 1957, Ghana finally gained its independence. And to mark this historic event and signal to the entire world that the Gold Coast could manage its finances and its economy, they introduced a new currency named the Ghanaian pound. And at introduction, one Ghanaian pound was worth one British pound. So as any logical human being would ask, why wouldn't they just industrialize their country? Oh boy, they tried. The Akosombo Dam was built to produce hydroelectric power. The Volta Aluminum Company, or Valco, was also built to process bauxite into aluminium using power from the Akosombo Dam. The Tema Motorway to connect the port city of Tema to Accra. The Ghana Atomic Energy Commission was also founded to explore and develop nuclear energy. The Ghana Black Star Line was also established as a shipping line to support trade and reduce the reliance on foreign shipping companies. These were some of the expansionary policies put in place by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah to industrialize the country. That was very commendable. But guess what? It was a small country which was heavily reliant on exporting raw materials. They had no money. So one may ask where they were getting all these monies for the projects. Loans, borrowing. Apart from the excessive borrowing to fund these projects, the government was also importing technology and machinery, and all this was from money they did not have. The country had to go back to the UK and US for support.
No, God! No!
So while these projects were envisioned to secure success and wealth for the country in the future, they were causing economic harm in the present. So the country couldn't settle its debts, it couldn't sustain the 1-to-1 Ghana pound to British pound ratio, and everything seemed to be falling apart. Another thing trying to industrialize the country caused was inflation. Let me explain. Since there had been an injection of new money into the system and there still hadn't been any substantial growth in the manufacturing sector in the country, there was still limited supply of commodities. So with huge amount of money chasing a small amount of commodities, the prices of those small commodities will then be increased to cause inflation. So this is how what was supposed to be an industrial revolution began the gradual decay of the Ghanaian city. Let me know your thoughts. What should have been done differently? What do you think the problems were? And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week. In next week's video, we are going to be talking about how these hardships caused the 5 coups that happened in the years after, and how this further affected the Ghanaian economy. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.